apparently did a copy paste. All right. So where there we go. I just kept going. I was going to read it again.
It's an encore.
Yeah, and Sergeant Jones is going to be presenting with Scott Cullinane, which I think I got his name right first time. Scott's the National Account Director of Transportation Sales and Strategy at Skydio, where he leads the effort to bring drone as first responder technology to state departments of transportation, state police, and tollway and transit authorities. Scott helps agencies modernize highway incident response, putting an aerial view over crash scene before responders arrive, verifying incidents faster, dispatching the right resources the first time, and clearing crashes more quickly to prevent secondary collisions. Skydio treats drone coverage not as a single agency tool, but a shared infrastructure, one aerial network serving traffic management centers, state police, and 911 alike.
All right, can everybody hear me? I may end up start walking. That's kind of what I like to do. I'm not big on standing up here and just standing in one spot. So if I start walking and I need to, you need to hear me, just say, hey, I can't hear you. So like you said, Samuel Jones, I've been with Brookhaven for, since 2019. I was at the city of Smyrna just before then. I joined our drone unit whenever it started up. I didn't really know much about drones when we first started. I don't think anybody in public safety really did. And I was kind of doing it, I was on our traffic unit at the time. And I did it because I thought that drones would kind of help me with the reconstruction of accident scenes from public safety standpoint. So we'll jump right to next. Yep. So for those that don't know anything about Brookhaven, it's located just beside Atlanta. It's a bedroom community of Atlanta. It's in DeKalb County. We're about 13 square miles. 60,000 residents. We utilize ALPR technology, which is automated license plate readers throughout the city. We live stream live 911 calls directly to our officers. So essentially, whenever you call 911, every police officer in Brookhaven hears that call coming in. And I think most importantly for this presentation, we're the second DFR organization or agency in the world. It started out in Chula Vista, California. We brought that concept to Brookhaven, and it's grown since then in public safety. So talking about DFR, who knows what DFR is or has ever heard of it or anything like that? I guess we'll start with that. All right, so I guess let me give a little context to what we're talking about. So DFR is drone as first responder. So the whole premise behind DFR is you have pre-positioned drones located throughout a jurisdiction, and it's kind of data driven. So you want to put these drones in places where they're going to be used, right? You don't want some drone just sitting out in the field where there's not going to be 911 calls coming in. So they're pre-positioned and they launch to calls for service. So whether it's someone calling 911 for an emergency, or if it's someone calling because there's a burglary or something like that, or you have a police officer that's out doing some kind of work, a traffic stop, getting out with a suspicious person, you have accidents, things of those natures. So they're not out actively or proactively patrolling, they're responding to incidents. So with that being said, that's kind of the premise in a very watered down version of what DFR is. So talking about DFR, you kind of have to understand we're talking about airspace, right? So as soon as we lift up off the ground, we're no longer talking about City of Brookhaven, we're talking about the National Airspace System. So that's governed by the FAA. So what you see right here on my left, on the left side of the screen, you see the outline of the City of Brookhaven, kind of where it is, located just inside the perimeter. And then to the right of that is what we call a UAS facility map. So when we're talking about facility maps, you have airspace that's broken down into 6 different categories. 5 of those is controlled airspace, so that's typically going to be an airport within that jurisdiction or that area. And then outside of that, you have Class G airspace or uncontrolled airspace. So the importance of that is if you see where Brookhaven is on the left and then compare that to what's on the right, you'll notice we're in what's considered Class D airspace or Peachtree DeKalb Airport, if anybody's aware of that, right? So with that being said, there's a limitation on how high you can fly. So there's a lot of concerns of like, can you get to a certain place? Can you get to a certain location? We've been doing it since we started our program, and we've actually expanded how far out we can get. So there were areas within the city of Brookhaven that we could not get to because of regulatory frameworks. There are waivers now that are in place that we were able to expand our DFR coverage to where we're getting essentially anywhere in the city, like you said, on an average of under 60 seconds. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it's like 57 point something to be exact. Oh, sorry. Yep. So kind of going back, I think it's kind of important to understand what the history of DFR is. So like I said, it started in 2021 with our program. It kind of came off of an operational need, not necessarily a technology want. We had an incident where we came upon some individuals that were breaking into cars. The officer got out with that individual, apprehended one. The second person fled out into a local park. And, you know, we set up a perimeter kind of like officers normally do and tried to apprehend the individual. It was at night. And then we called in for some aerial assets from some neighboring jurisdictions. Long story short on that, nobody had a helicopter that was available. So we obviously saw a need for like, hey, we need a tool in order to help us solve a problem. And that problem being able to locate people whenever we're looking for them, whether that be for a crime, a missing person, an incident that's occurred. We saw the need. So that's where we went out to Chula Vista after they had developed the program, brought it back to Brookhaven, and have grown it since then. The way that DFR was traditionally done was you had to have drones atop high-rise buildings because you had to have a direct link between the drone and the operator. The drone operator would be flying with the controller in their hand. They would see the drone. They would have to have airspace awareness because, like I said, we're located within the controlled airspace of Peachtree DeKalb Airport. So we would have to see where the drone was in relation to other aircraft and stuff like that to ensure there was some kind of deconfliction. Since then, technology and the regulatory framework has advanced to allow us to be able to have a pilot stationed within our police department and drones that are spread across our jurisdiction at a variety of different locations. A lot of questions come up of where do you put drones? I keep on doing the click. And that's where this whole screen right here comes in. There's a data-driven approach to this. It's not just you throw it on a wall and hope something sticks. So whenever we developed our drone program, on the left here, you'll see we call it a heat map. So obviously the red indicates there's more activity, the blue is less activity. So you notice the corridors, that's Buford Highway, 85, and then you have Peachtree Road just north of that. So that's where a majority of our calls for service are coming from, a majority of the work that's being done by police officers being done. And then as you transition up to the northern end of the city, there's less calls for service coming in. So when we first started our program, we only had 2 locations that would respond to probably about 60% of our city. The top end was, there was some regulatory, like I was talking about those facility maps, we were restricted, couldn't fly there. That's changed since then. And then to the right, you'll see of what we looked at whenever we began transitioning over to Skydio. Skydio, we were able to pull off a year's worth of call for service data, and we were able to see those thoroughfares that we were talking about a second ago, where the calls are coming in at, and we decided to replicate essentially the same concept that we had when we first began our program of putting drones exactly where they're going to be needed. There's no faster response time that you're going to get with a drone than being exactly where something's going on at, and that's what we've seen. That's how we've been able to achieve the response time that I was talking about a second ago. So whenever somebody calls 911 or an incident happens, or even you get an autonomous alert, like you'll see here in a minute, whenever you're able to launch and get eyes overseen and start providing information out to people that are responding to these incidents, it really changes the way a response happens. It changes the way that a response gets triaged and reported. Yeah, so the next big piece, I think, to this whole thing is transparency. One of the biggest parts of DFR, it's a flying camera, essentially. And if you talk to anybody that's in the public, there's concerns about privacy and stuff like that. So we recognize that early on. So what we do is we promote our program. We're transparent about our program. So anytime we get an opportunity to discuss it, we do. We hold a variety of different public, I wouldn't say meetings, but talks with the community. And then on top of that, on the top left, you'll see a page that we promote every flight that we do. So anytime a drone flies out to a call for service, we put that on a page that shows where the call was, what it was in relation to, and then it has an event number. So that way, if there's somebody in the public that wants to look further into that call, they have that information. They can come to the police department and they can discuss it with it, discuss that call with us, or even get the report or the information that came off of it. The big piece about this, like I said, is the public transparency part, and it's the part about being open about what you're doing. You don't want to have a program or have assets like this flying around corridors, neighborhoods, or anything like that, and have the public wondering what it is you're doing. Especially as a government entity, there becomes concerns on privacy and things like that. So being open, being transparent with your program, being inviting to people that are curious about what you're doing is a big piece about DFR as a whole. Now this right here, this kind of transitioned into essentially where we are today. Like I said earlier on, we were limited to having to be on top of high-rise buildings for that direct line of sight. As we transition to Skydio, this has kind of changed the way that we've been able to deploy our drones. We've been able to go from rooftops to ground-based deployments. So essentially anywhere that I need to put a drone, it can go. You're not limited to a high-rise building. You're not going to be limited to a certain location where you have to have hardwired internet or something like that. The site that you see on the bottom right corner, kind of in the park with the black fence around it, that was one of the sites. It's a public park, so we made sure to put all of our assets in public locations. But that's not somewhere that you would traditionally have some kind of hardwired internet to. So we found that we used a cradle point, which is just essentially a modem, ran power out to that location, and now you have service. So if you have a location that's out essentially in the middle of nowhere, if you can get electricity there, you can fly the drones there. Like I said, on top of rooftops is other locations that really help. But that's kind of the deployment model that we're after. So kind of jumping into the workflow of how DFR works, at least for us in our city. Let me see if it'll get it playing. So yeah, so essentially how this whole thing works is you get a call for service coming in. The red dots down there on the bottom, you're able to get an AI transcription of what that call may be. So whatever the person called in and said, hey, you know, whatever the incident may be, they're getting that information coming in, and then the officer is able to click on that with a click of a button, respond to that incident, and then the drone's going to automatically launch up into the air to that incident. Can everybody see it? I know y'all are like over here. Okay. So we talk about a lot as far as DFR is concerned about cognitive load. That's one of the things that being able to have autonomous features like this really solves for. You're not having to worry so much about what the drone's doing, where you're going, information coming in, everything being on, it's kind of an overused term, but one pane of glass really helps the pilot whenever they're trying to do a job and they communicate out verbally to either responding officers or other assets. They're able to put out information verbally for those that can't see it. The good thing about this, like I was talking a minute ago about, is the live streaming capabilities. So if you have centers or call centers, dispatch centers or stuff like that, they can see the same thing. So whoever it is that you want to push this out to can see the same workflow on essentially a little bit of a different screen, but they're able to see everything and make decisions based off of what they're getting in as well. So it's not only the people that are on the ground, it's the other decision makers that's kind of behind the glass that are able to see, you know, what's going on. They're able to triage the incident. They're able to either de-escalate or escalate a response. I was talking, I can't remember exactly who it was with over here earlier, but a lot of times when we're talking about traffic incidents, we'll see a couple of those in a second. A lot of times you'll get incidents that either come in where it's reported as this severe accident and you get there and it's a fender bender, and then there's times you get little to no information, then you come out there and it's a hazmat incident. Being able to get eyes on scene within, like I said, 60 seconds of a call, or even, you know, sometimes shorter, sometimes a little bit longer, you're able to really triage that incident and provide the resources that it needs. We kind of use a precision policing model is what we kind of look at it as. There we go. So this one right here, this is a recent story that we kind of publicized utilizing the software. We were able to get a 911 alert based off of the iPhone crash detection. So there's an integration that Skydio has with a company called Rapid SOS. They have a partnership to where the officer got an alert through the system indicating there had been a crash at the location. So before anybody ever called 911, the officer deployed the drone out to that location, was able to see what turned out to be a mail truck that had rolled down an embankment and then went into a tree line that adjacent to a golf course and knocked over like a manhole cover. And so there's obviously mail everywhere and all kind of incidents. So before before the call ever came in, he was able to get there on scene, see that one, there's no injury, so there's no need to start an ambulance, to start fire. And this is a small residential neighborhood, but you can kind of see the workflow and the concept. On top of that, he's able to start a wrecker. That way they can go ahead and start clearing that scene. He can notify Public Works. That way they can get out there and start repairing the structure that need to be repaired. So the workflow that, as you can see, and this all happens, like I said, before anyone ever calls 911, which is critical whenever you're doing responses, whenever you're trying to clear scenes, when you transition that onto an incident that may happen on the interstate or a major thoroughfare, that really changes the way anything kind of you respond to it. This is another video.
2026. Brookhaven officers responded to a serious rollover crash with injuries on Interstate
So
85,
this right here is I-85.
arriving on
just under
scene
North
while the
Druid
call
Hills.
was still being
It's
transferred to the
technically
proper
not within the city
jurisdiction.
limits of Brookhaven, so that's why we initially didn't respond to it. But as we got out there, you can see kind of the workflow of how this happens. The officer got out there, saw that there was a rollover crash. You get the resources up. Scott, I think this is you.
So yeah, no, appreciate that, Sergeant Jones. And as mentioned, I'm Scott Cullinane. I lead Skydio's transportation vertical across the country. So, right, you look at obviously the amazing work that Brookhaven PD did. They set the foundation for the rest of the country, basically, on what drone as first responder could be and how deployments can look outside of Georgia, outside of Chula Vista, and across the country. So you see there's 175 agencies operating drone as first responder across the country now. And right with that, as the manufacturer, we were able to understand, right, what Sergeant Jones was saying about like where things need to be plugged into, like whether it's 911 CAD information, whether it's video management, whether it's whatever is going to trigger a flight and whatever is going to trigger situational awareness, and how to share that situational awareness across a responding jurisdiction. So right, I mean, you see this technology has really scaled in a short amount of time with all of the foundational work that Brookhaven was able to provide, and then other agencies were seemingly able to rip off and duplicate and make sure and form fit it to what they need to see in their jurisdiction. So some other really good examples of this too are again happening across the country. And if I could, oh, it's loading up right now. Now I'm getting a restart button. Okay. So there was a video here, but basically a good story here was with Fairfax County PD, right? Obviously a very large jurisdiction, Northern Virginia, weird airspace around that area too, obviously with DC close by. They were able to respond to a call where basically the ground assets showed up and they weren't able to see what exactly was going on, right? There was no car visible. There was a guardrail that was affected, but they didn't see a car. So what they were able to do is fly a drone out, understand, as you see in this video, where exactly the car was. That car was, in a densely wooded area. You can see that guardrail somewhere in this video right there. So the guardrail was obviously hit. Of course, you cannot see that on the ground. You cannot see where the car would be on the ground. So they were able to zoom in on the drone, understand where the car was, understand if there's any pedestrians, and form fit their response based off of that real-time aerial information. So you see, boom, there's the car. What do we need? We need a wrecker. We need lane closures. We need to make sure we get this cleared out as quickly as possible to eliminate the potential dangers that exist with secondary crashes or pedestrians on the roadway, things of that nature. So it's really those types of, response-based things, operating based off of a lot of unknown information and being able to visually verify with what's going on and share that information in real time. So they took this video, they shared it with local fire, tow, EMS. So they were all operating, singing off the same sheet of music when they arrived, understood what they needed to show up with to clear the scene a lot quicker. And there was a good example, right? It's not always going to be a car. Sometimes it's a pedestrian, right? In Dallas Police Department, there's a pedestrian walking around I-45. And they got the call for service and they go, right, it's you all understand this. Like, it's not something that's outside of the realm of possibilities. There's always dynamic things happening on a roadway system on a minute by minute basis. So this was a pedestrian walking around on the roadway. Dallas PD flew their drone out. This was like the second day of their drone as first responder program. So they flew it out, understand where exactly that person was, understood how officers needed to arrive to that scene, right? It's the underlying goal of Vision Zero that US DOT puts out, making sure that you can prevent preventable fatalities on roadways. This is a great example. So they dispatched 2 officers. They were they knew how to close lanes. They knew how to ingress the scene to de-escalate it as much as possible, found the pedestrian, got him out of harm's way, and then they kept traffic flowing at 65 miles an hour along that roadway as it's designed. So, right, I mean, you kind of look at it with, the overall metrics of it, right? The seconds matter with highway response. Highway response is a shared responsibility from first responders, as we heard with Sergeant Jones, obviously Dallas PD, Fairfax County, but then also departments of transportation, right? You have a shared goal to reduce fatalities and to keep traffic flowing, right? Public safety cares about getting there first. Departments of transportation care about making sure the commerce and people can continue to flow. So if you look at response times, I think Sandy Springs is a great example, where they fly drone as first responder for their fire department, flies drones as first responder for incident response. And they do it because they need to know how to get to that scene in the quickest amount of time. And if they make the wrong decision, if they make the wrong guess, then that could add in like a 20-minute delay based off of the interchange and then potentially approaching traffic. So they use this response tool as a way to tell their responders how to get to where they need to get. And then they're able to save 20 minutes because they're eliminating the guesswork from their response. And if you look at it from a clearance time, right, like drones aren't gonna, they're not gonna prevent primary crashes from happening, right? That's a lot of the NHTSA conversations with behavioral driving and all the work that's been done there. Drones aren't gonna, drones first responder isn't gonna prevent primaries, but they can, through the inputs of that information, it's allowing the secondary responders and the primary responders to reduce the times off of verification, to reduce the times off of ingress, to reduce the times off of secondary dispatch. So, right, the idea is to be able to, once the primary happens, clear that as quickly as possible to reduce the probability of secondaries. And then there's also the unnecessary calls for service. I think GDOT's done a great job with the Heroes and the Champ trucks to make sure that they're understanding what is going on. They can't be as awesome as that program is. There's the physical constraint of them needing to be everywhere all the time. So it's being able to dispatch those resources more effectively to show up to areas where they need to show up, where they can be of service to pedestrians, to vehicles, things of that nature. So they're able to, right, and I think a big part of drone as first responder programs across the country is a big metric that they chase is being able to clear unnecessary calls for service, right? As Sergeant Jones mentioned, the inputs of information are oftentimes very sporadic and you can't understand the severity, right? You get a call for service in for a 5-car pileup and it's actually just a fender bender, right? Knowing what resources to dispatch and knowing how to best utilize those resources are a lot of key metrics that drone as first responder programs are seeing. And if you look at the actual outcomes, right, there's been a lot of studies around secondary crashes, right? There's a high probability of secondary crashes that result in the overall crash inventory of, a state or a jurisdiction. So if you look at it, it's a 2.8% increase of secondary crash probability per minute, the primary remains a hazard. So if you're able to clear those primaries 15 to 30 minutes quicker, you can yield a reduction of crashes. You can decrease the probability of crashes happening by around 34 to 56%. back of the napkin math, but numbers there. And then there's the traveling public benefit too. Like, I know Georgia is one of the largest freight corridors, and there's a heavy focus on the flow of those goods going through the state. So if you look at that, there's the there's dollars associated to it. There's a $350 cost per minute of a roadway closure. So if you're able to, again, clear those primaries quicker and then keep the flow of commerce going, you're able to boost the GDP flowing in and out of a state. So if you look at it from a 10,000 crash sample size, and you're able to clear those crashes 15 to 30 minutes quicker, that economic impact, you're looking at the tens of millions to $100+ million of that flow. And it's not something that we feel on a daily basis, but it is something that just allows for goods and services to continue to move through a state, through a very important state in the overall transportation ecosystem. So we really appreciate everyone's time. We do appreciate everyone waking up early to listen to us. So we're more than happy to answer any questions that you have. We will be here for the rest of the day. And yeah, thank you, Tom, for facilitating. And again, you waking up early as well. I know it's kind of hard for you. So yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, so our next presenter is Rob Derry, retired Connecticut State Police Lieutenant, accomplished public safety and transportation operations leader with over 35 years of experience in law enforcement, traffic incident management, and multi-agency coordination. Demonstrated experience in operational command, emergency response planning and staff leadership, and stakeholder engagement across state agencies and local governments. Proven trainer and facilitator for large-scale traffic management initiatives, and I think either Scott or Rob, unless somebody's from out in the West Coast, are two of our furthest traveled speakers. So let's give a welcome to Rob.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. So yeah, good morning, everyone. Rob Derry here. As you can tell, Tom already gave it away. I'm not from Atlanta, so if you don't understand me because I'm the outsider with the accent, it's all good. But thanks for having us. And I also learned yesterday the Cobb County DOT director, is he here today? Oh, there he is. Thank you for calling us weird. You're a good man, right? That was a nice term, by the way. I said, I've been called a lot worse, trust me. All right, so moving on, just so I wouldn't have put this glamour shot in here had I known Tom was gonna kind of talk about who we are. But yeah, I've been with Arcadis now for 4 years, upon retirement from the state police. And the reason that is because where I came from, with the Connecticut State Police, Arcadis runs a traffic management center co-located with the state police inside of Troop G Bridgeport. Troop G Bridgeport covers I-95 for basically half of Connecticut coming out of New York along that thoroughfare there, as well as the Merritt Parkway. And you can see some quick stats here about what Troop G is, and the reason why the DOT put a TMC with the state police is because it is just crazy monumentally busy there. That area of operation, you can see that red line on the bottom, the Troop G area coming out of New York. Over the last 5 years, over 28,000 motor vehicle crashes investigated just by Troop G troopers. Over 6,300 of those were injury with over 50 fatalities. So it's a very, very busy area of highway operation, which is why we co-located the Highway Operations Center, which is that right there. That is inside the State Police Dispatch Center, so they work hand in hand together. It is really what I found working with the State Police and now working with DOT and Arcadis is that this is very unique. That usually there's too many egos in the room where either DOT wants to be in charge or the state police want to be in charge. But here, it's unbelievable what a team is and how well this really works. So today I'm going to talk about the team mentality, talking about unified approach to traffic safety. We're going to talk about the 3 E's. I'll mention what those are in a second. And 2 great examples about what the Connecticut DOT is doing with the assistance of Arcadis with their wrong-way driving detection system and also the traffic incident management training that we've been doing over the last 4 years. You'll see some of the numbers there. We've been doing quite a bit of it, and we'll talk about the successes. So, the 3 E's. The 3 E's we talk about are engineering, enforcement, and education. So, when we talk about a safety initiative for traffic operations and trying to keep people as safe as possible, obviously there's an engineering aspect and enforcement education, and a lot of times people kind of stay in their own lanes. What Connecticut did is we kind of put that all together and worked together to come up to kind of working together kind of makes it a lot more successful when we're all working together in our areas of operation, coming kind of working with one stream. So the way that works here in Connecticut is that you obviously do your research, right? You get all your information, and in Connecticut we get it through RIDIS, we get it through the Yukon Crash Repository that tracks all the data of motor vehicle crashes across the state as well as the DOT. They'll analyze that, find patterns, they'll figure out a game plan, whatever that initiative is going to be, to kind of attack that particular issue. They get everybody together, the operations side, the stakeholders, the engineers come up with everything and then employ what they're going to do, put it out into the field. And a couple examples I'm going to share with you in a minute that you'll be able to see how well that really works. So we talk about the 3 E's, again, engineering, enforcement, and education. Engineering is the smart people, right? Those are the ones, all you guys here, you know, I'm an operations guy, so just give me something, I'll break it, and you guys will fix it, right? But engineering, you guys are doing all the behind-the-scenes stuff, the technology, the enforcement, actually going out there and doing it and kind of reinforcing what we're doing. And then the education is where we kind of work together and we go out there and talk to the people that are involved with the response when it comes to this initiative and kind of get everybody on board with that. So a couple of examples. So I'm going to talk about, number one, the wrong way driving initiative that Connecticut has undertaken over the last 3 years. We'll talk about how that's been super successful, saving lives without question, because obviously we all know wrong way driving across the country has really become an issue, and it's on limited access highways, divided highways. People ask, well, why is this all of a sudden an issue? It's been an issue for a while. And I always, in our traffic incident management training class, we always tell all the first responders, hey, listen, tell your families, if you're driving at night, drive in that far right-hand travel lane, because I can tell you in my experience, almost every head-on crash that we had to investigate was almost always in your left lane because the wrong way driver thinks they're in their right lane, right? It almost always happens that way. So it's a little tidbit to pick up there. So we'll talk about wrong way driving. We'll talk about traffic incident management, the Federal Highway Administration program that all states do, but in Connecticut we really kind of kicked it into high gear, and we'll talk about where that is today. So wrong way driving, let's talk about this first. So wrong way driving, although in this crash world, wrong way crashes are rare, however, they're very, very extreme because it's usually a high-speed head-on crash and not good things come of it. So the reason why Connecticut got so hot on this is that obviously there's a lot of fatalities happening to wrong way drivers, but in 2022, there was a state representative literally coming from Governor Lamont. He just got elected. He had his inaugural ball in Hartford. That state rep at midnight is heading down Route 9 back to Middletown, Connecticut, where he covers, and he gets hit head-on by a wrong way driver, and tragically, both him and the wrong way driver were killed. So that really prompted the legislators to kind of get together and say, whoa, we got a problem here. So they actually put together a bill, which is now law, that tasked the Connecticut DOT to come up with some sort of wrong way driver countermeasures. So the engineers dove headfirst into this, and they came up with a system called the Blink system, wrong way driving. I'll share that with you in a minute. So we talk about wrong way crashes. They're 100 times more likely to be fatal. Obviously, that's very typical. We know that. We have found in Connecticut that in 2022 was our high point with 23 fatalities of wrong way crashes. That really kind of got us, kind of woke us up a little bit. And 53% of the wrong way driving crashes involve the younger drivers. And obviously, the majority of the wrong way drivers, there's usually some sort of impairment on board. Sometimes it is an elderly driver, but the majority is impairment. So what we did with this, the engineering, they dove headfirst into this. They ended up identifying the 120, really the highest risk ramps. There's about 700 on and off ramps in Connecticut, being a small state. So they identified the top 120 of those. They ended up putting the systems in there. They did some static changes with some signage, but they also put in the wrong way driver system. And you can see over to the right, I know it's kind of small, but that's the system. So you got a vehicle that comes up the ramp the wrong way. There's thermal detection cameras on there. So when they come through that thermal detection zone in that little blue area you can see there, that now all the lights start flashing on the ramp wrong way, wrong way. There's a big white light that comes on to illuminate the ramp because 70% of these wrong way drivers are happening at night. On top of that, there's an alarm, a very loud alarm that goes off at the DOT traffic management centers, as well as the state police troop that covers that particular area. So everybody's seeing what's going on right away, and we can get resources there as quick as possible. You go a little bit further up the ramp to that red area. That's called the confirmation zone. Once a vehicle gets that port, they get another alarm saying, hey, listen, this guy is still going the wrong way. We got a big problem here. So that's kind of how the system works. I'm going to give you some stats here in a moment. But then we get the enforcement because of the notification to the state police and everybody else, so we get people there as quick as possible. And they'll go back, and every one of these activations are recorded, so we can go back and take a look at it and see what is happening out there. So you can see here, out of all the ramps that are evaluated, they identified the 120 highest risk ones. And as of June 2026, there are 223 of these systems installed across the state of Connecticut. Those little orange dots you see on the map on the bottom left, those are the locations of all the wrong-way driver detection systems that are currently activated. The DOT is telling us that they want to have 300 of these up and running by the end of this year, so they are constantly putting these things in. And these aren't cheap. They're about $100,000 a pop to put in. So it's quite a big investment here. But you can see it is working. So if you look in the center screen there, as between December 2023, which is the first system went in, to where we are last month, June 2026, we've had 1,143 vehicles have come up one of these systems the wrong way and activated the system. That's a lot of wrong-way drivers. And that's only the ramps where the system is located. We don't know the other 500 ramps because there's no data to come from that, right? However, out of those 1,143, 953 of those vehicles have done what we call self-correction. That's almost 84% of the vehicles that come up the ramp the wrong way stop and turn themselves around and head the right way. So this is where the lives are being saved, because people are realizing that they have to turn around. However, in the red there, you can see almost 17% of people do continue the wrong way, unfortunately. And how the system works. So this is one that happened on June 23rd, 2024 at 12:26 in the morning on I-84, exit 56 in the city of East Hartford. So if this plays, here we go. So you're going to see the wrong way vehicle come up the ramp. You're going to see a white light kind of illuminate the asphalt. That's the light on the thermal detection camera. The lights are flashing. So you can see cars are coming at him. This guy driving the truck, he's so screwed up, he flashes the high beam because he thinks those 4 cars are going the wrong way, right? This is what we see all the time, all the time. So he's going to self-correct. But 84% of the time, this is what we are seeing through these systems. So this is saving lives without question. There's no doubt about it. And our numbers have been showing that the fatality numbers are coming down from years past because of things like that. And as we can all probably imagine, the majority of the wrong-way drivers are Friday into Saturday, Saturday into Sunday, overnight, right? And here's the stats that just go to prove that. And for some reason, it seems like around the holidays, November, December, January, we had an uptick. I don't know if it's because it's holiday parties or what's going on, but summer, it actually slows down a little bit. All right, so that's wrong-way driving. The next thing is traffic incident management. We talk about the Connecticut DOT's program. This is the Federal Highway Program, so the DOT receives funding from Federal Highway to push out this program. And this program goes out to police, fire, EMS, tow truck drivers, dispatchers, utility companies, DOT, anybody who's dealing with things in the road or highway. There is a state law now in Connecticut that passed 2 years ago that requires all Connecticut law enforcement officers, local police, state troopers have to get this program. So our team goes through and does all the police academies and a lot of in-service training for law enforcement. We have done tons of fire departments on board with this. It's a 6-hour class that we put through. And there's legislation that came out last month that now requires all tow companies that tow for police matters, crashes and things like that, now have to get this. So our team is about to become very busy this fall to get all these Connecticut tow companies through this program. So this is the education side, right? So the education is getting people on board, and the whole idea with traffic incident management is getting all these responders on one team, right? When we respond to one of these incidents like we've been talking about, we all have to work together. We all have our certain roles and responsibilities to get this thing cleaned up. We want to get off this road as quick as we can. The guys previously they talked about secondary crashes. You know, secondary crashes are 1 out of 10 of those, unfortunately, results in fatalities or serious physical injuries. So we're trying to get to the highway, to the road, deal with this incident, whatever it is, clean it up and get off there as quick as we can. But the way we do that is by working together and getting everybody kind of doing their roles in as quick and as safely as possible. On top of the traffic incident management, we also do a lot of after-action reviews. You guys may have saw a couple years ago, we had a very substantial motor vehicle crash in Connecticut on I-95 in Norwalk, where a gasoline tanker hauling 8,000 gallons of gasoline got involved with a crash, caught on fire. The driver pulls over and stops. However, he pulls over and stops under a highway overpass. And that whole bridge became engulfed with flames, and gasoline burning at such a hot temperature, it actually melted the steel girders on the bridge overpass. So that bridge overpass had to come down. This was a Thursday morning, Thursday, May 2nd, 2024, in Norwalk. This happened, 5:26 in the morning. That highway was closed until Sunday night, so 3 consecutive days of closures. And so you can imagine, you guys, many of you obviously have 95 coming through here in Georgia. Imagine shutting that down for 3 days. What's going to happen to the community, right? It was an utter nightmare with traffic. We all know that. We had a lot of secondary crashes, both on the highway and off the highway, going through the diversion routes. But it was really a pretty amazing thing. But what we ended up doing is about a month after the incident, what we do is our team gathers all the response data. And we've done over 30 of these, probably about 35 of these over the last 3 years, where about a month after this large-scale event, we'll get everybody back into a room like this. We'll put all the data together, put together a timeline from the first 911 call to what every agency did through the kind of the timeline stamp that comes from the dispatch logs, and we'll collectively discuss it. Hey, what worked? What didn't work? What can we do better next time? And I got to tell you, we have seen a dramatic improvement for the next time, because we always know there's going to be a next time. And when we go out there, after we've done one of these after-action reviews, the communication really opens up, and things are moving along a lot quicker now. So it's really working, and we're very proud of what we've been doing there. So here's just some of our traffic incident management stats. So top left, you see 9,500 plus. We're close to about 10,000 right now that we put through over the last 4 years. In Connecticut, they've estimated there's about 56,000 first responders from this TIM community. So we still have a long way to go. We've done 30 plus after actions. We're all over the state. And the way we do this is it's myself. There's a retired state police sergeant that's on our team that ran our accident reconstruction unit, so he's heavily involved with this. And then we have our DOT highway operations manager down at the Bridgeport Op Center. And the three of us do the bulk of the training. And because Connecticut being a small state, we have a very, very tight network that we all know the fire community, the police community, the towing community. So we have you can see the numbers in the bottom left. We really started to spike up in 2023. You can see the years before that was pretty much non-existent in Connecticut. But over the last several years, we really kicked it into high gear. And we are definitely seeing a benefit to this, because now you look at clearance times, right, for significant traffic events that happen. We are seeing a better clearance time because of this training, everybody working together, and kind of the communication that comes of it. So to summarize all this, listen, this stuff is working. We all have to work together. We always talk about in the TIM training that, listen, we have to check our egos at the door, right? Police have a role, towers have a role, fire, EMS, DOT. We all have certain roles and responsibilities. But when we check those egos at the door, we work together, get our jobs done. This stuff is working, and we're very, very proud of that. You can see here that the Connecticut DOT recently won a national award from the National Operations Center of Excellence. The TISMO award winner for the wrong-way driving, and then the TISMO overall winner for the wrong-way driver detection systems that we just shared with you. That's actually Adam right there, the young man on the left, the DOT engineer that's kind of spearheading this for the DOT for the wrong-way driving. So he sent them out to accept his award. But like I said, the DOT is, and our team is very, very proud of everything that the DOT has been doing out there. So to kind of wrap this up, we all work together, engineering, enforcement, education. We talk about teamwork, the whole, the vibe of this whole seminar this weekend or this week, working together. And we really are a strong proponent of everybody working together. Communication, I got to tell you, communication drives so much of what we do, and certainly in public safety. We kind of go around and kind of preach that, listen, communication can either make it a success or make it a failure. Every time we go back and look at an after-action review, if there are some things that went kind of sideways and kind of didn't go very well, it almost always comes back to some sort of miscommunication, lack of communication. So we really harp on everybody kind of working together, talking to each other, and kind of developing their game plan to deal with this big mess. So that's it. I'll be here as well. Feel free to ask questions. I'd love to talk to anybody. But thank you for your time. All right, thanks.
I don't know if it's the trainer part or the Connecticut part, but when I saw you had 27 slides, I was like, oh, geez, we're not getting through this at all.
Oh, no, we got you
But
covered.
yeah, wow.
Listen, I also knew I was doing this after last night with the karaoke, and I know there's a lot of people in here that aren't feeling too well right now. So.
All right, our next speaker, let's welcome one of the newer members of our community, the 400 Express Lanes. Our speaker's Everett Rakert. He's a transportation technology executive with nearly 30 years of international experience in electronic toll collection, managed lanes, intelligent transportation systems, and public-private partnerships, P3s. I think we've heard that once or twice this week. He currently serves as the tolling manager for SR 400 Peach Partners project in Georgia, leading the implementation and operational readiness, testing, readiness of one of the state's largest managed lanes programs. Everett has led the design, integration, testing, commissioning, and operation of complex tolling systems for major transportation projects across North America and South Africa. His portfolio includes the LBJ Express, North Tarrant Express, SH-288 toll lanes, and SR 400 express lanes. With expertise in dynamic pricing, toll back office systems, ITS integration, and roadway operations, he's recognized for delivering innovative, reliable tolling solutions that enhance mobility, operational performance, and the customer experience. Away from work, Everett enjoys exploring Roswell and the greater Atlanta area with his wife and family as they settle into their new home after relocating from Houston. So let's welcome Everett.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Tom. I also have something in my throat, not karaoke related, but I hope everybody can hear me. I've been very, very grateful to be part of this project. This is an amazing project in Georgia. Currently, the biggest project, P3 project in the U.S., roadway project in the U.S. We partnered with GDOT, and we're really a consortium of industry leaders that come together to make these large-scale projects work. This is a long-term investment for us. We invested a lot of funds into this project, and we will recoup that revenue over the next 50 years once we start operations. Just jumping into the project scope, so we are really becoming GDOT for this 50-mile stretch. We do everything GDOT typically does on a major highway. So we are responsible for the day-to-day operations of this 16-mile stretch. It's from North Springs, MARTA to about McFarland Parkway. We will be constructing 2 express lanes in each direction. And we're also integrating with MARTA. I know there were some questions yesterday about that, but we will be providing, I think there are currently 3 stations on the cards, possibly a 4th. So we are integrating with MARTA Bus Rapid Transit. We'll be providing access, and they will also be utilizing the corridor. And there is at least 2 stations that will be constructed for this project, maybe 3. And we're planning to open in 2031. So this is quite a rapid construction. Now, as part of operations, we work very, very closely with Alan and with Christina and the team to set up a temporary TMC. So as part of the contract, we are required to set up this temporary TMC during the 5 years of construction. And as I said, we do what GDOT does, but just at a much smaller scale, but much more focused. So we basically have a 24/7 TMC focusing on 16 miles of highway. We've established that, thank you. So we've established that at our offices in Alpharetta. You can see at the top right picture there, it's a very small setup. It's nothing like the big TMCs you guys might be used to, but it's functional, it's operational. It utilizes the Navigator software provided by GDOT. We coordinate very, very closely with the GDOT TMC. We also took over the ITS assets along that corridor. So we're monitoring the cameras and interacting with the devices. We're in the process of expanding CCTV coverage from 21 to 31 for this construction period. Our TMC personnel were trained at the GDOT facility, and that was, I think, one of the big positive outcomes for us. Approaching this, it was really important that we were seamless with GDOT, and we sat down, went through a whole scoping exercise with them, and we agreed that it would be best that they get trained, and Charissa and her team were great, and the guys did a fantastic job. We also had a GDOT tabletop exercise just before we went live, and really invaluable. The guys were really able to dig in, understand their roles, go through their procedures and processes, and make sure that it was a seamless transition. So we did a phased startup. We opened up April 1st as a soft start or a soft launch, where we were just operating in parallel to GDOT with no contractual obligations. Again, I think a very good decision. People work much better if they're not under pressure. And that gave us 2-3 weeks to really iron out the operational issues before we started with our contractual start of operations on April 21st. As you might have heard yesterday, we also launched our incident response units, IRU. They work alongside Hero in the Atlanta, that are operating in the Atlanta area. But I think we heard yesterday they have 85 operators for Hero. We've got 11 dedicated to 16 miles. So again, much more focus than you could get in a bigger system. We fully integrated into 511. As Christina said yesterday, if you call 511, we will respond. We're also working very closely with local enforcement and first responders as part of the TIME initiative, and we're also activating TRIP as needed. We've got our trucks there. You can see they've got push bumpers and the signage. And we also rolled out the lane blade system. For those of you who are not aware, it's a mechanically operated device in the front of the truck that pushes down into the pavement, and you can basically push anything off the roadway without having to stop, having to get somebody out into live traffic. So really very, very useful if you want to remove tires, small debris, under heavy traffic conditions. We can push it off to the side of the road, off the shoulder, and then after peak hour, you can go and pick up what's needed. And then also, we also rolled out a survey system as suggested by GDOT, where people complete surveys after they've received a service. And so far, we've only received 5-star reviews since we've been in operation, and it's also a way to motivate staff and get them to put that little bit extra in. So I'm going to jump into technology. Now, I know it's been a while since most of you guys went to school, but you might recognize that. That's a clean slate, right? Yeah, and some of the younger people might not know what that is, but I think we are very fortunate with this project. P3s has the ability to bring a lot of different companies and different institutions together, working to one goal to solve a really big problem. And these are people that would not normally work together. They would normally compete. I mean, we are a consortium of 3 very, very large companies that are actually competitors. But this project is forcing us to work together. So I think there was somebody from South Carolina yesterday asking a question about P3s, but for me, that's the real advantage of a P3, because you can throw a very, very, very difficult problem at a group of people, and they are going to come up with the best solution. Some of them might be crazy solutions, some of them might be completely over the top, and that's due to the nature of the bid and the bid evaluation process. You are being forced to come up with really good ideas, really crazy ideas that maybe under the normal circumstances people would not do. And at the same time, it's within a fixed budget and a very, very strict timeline. So we can deliver these projects in rapid succession. So looking at this, we had to come up with something very different for our ATMS solution. We could do what we did on any other project, roll out an ATMS, deploy cameras, have an incident response, and that probably would have been good enough. But we had to find a way to really enhance that, share information in real time, provide more information to our operators across different platforms, and help to improve safety, mobility, and operational efficiency. So looking at this, we've come up with an architecture that supports all of these systems. Firstly, our ATMS solution serves as the operational backbone, and everything will be integrated into this ATMS. We're rolling out AI solutions that will help with decision-making and automation of some of the common activities that takes time, and under pressure, sometimes people don't do everything in the right order. We saw this also as an opportunity to roll out a digital twin for the project and try and integrate this digital twin into this ATMS solution. We are deploying a virtual crisis room, and this is going to have to be in lockstep with our local first responders to see the feasibility, the pluses and the minuses, and we're going to have to streamline this, but in the ideal world, this will give them access in real time to any incident scene, and they can actually evaluate what's happening, what do they need to bring to this incident, and coordinate better between the various partners. We're also looking at deploying a predictive analytic tool that will be able to not only manage congestion or help us to better analyze congestion, but also let's plan for incidents. Let's sit down with first responders and say, we have a tanker incident at this location. What are the potential impacts? How do we get vehicles to the scene? What are the potential delays? So you can now come up with really any constraint you can think of, put that into the model, and evaluate the potential outcomes. That also includes AI traffic simulation. We're also rolling out V2X throughout the entire corridor, which will allow us to communicate back and forth with motorists once vehicles are fully equipped. And then I think this is probably a first for the US. We're rolling out a radar detection system that covers 90% of the roadway. So these are not your typical radar counters, but this actually will be doing live incident detection. So if you have stalls, accidents, pedestrians, obstructions, this system should notify and identify, notify, and then help us to respond quickly. AI has really helped us in that field because you've had automatic incident detection systems for many, many years. But the problem is always the noise and trying to get rid of the noise and focus on what's really important. And we believe we have really a very good solution here that will be fully integrated into our ATMS. So if there is an obstruction, there is a ladder in the roadway, we will get that alert and we'll be able to respond effectively and not wait for accidents to happen. So the whole message for us is really be reactive and not proactive. So our operators will be able to also evaluate the impacts of lane closures, major crashes, weather events, holiday events, work zones, diversions up front, and then also help to detect incidents or obstructions and accidents before they have a further impact. So really in summary, we believe that we've developed an architecture, a system architecture that will encompass all of these subsystems. And that for us is really the core. You have to come up with an architecture, a layout, a plan where you can switch these various systems over time, because nothing that we do here is going to be there for 50 years. We're going to be looking at replacing and enhancing some of these 5-10 years down the line. So we've come up with an open source architecture that we believe will support all these technologies. We're trying as far as possible to stay away from proprietary solutions. We're trying to use open industry standards, especially when it comes to the digital twin solutions. We don't want to be vendor locked, using open APIs and basically forcing our vendors to be open to working with others. And then we believe this will help us to deploy and evaluate and adjust solutions over the course of this project, and also working closely with GDOT, our technology partners, and first responders on the corridor. Thank you.
Okay, thanks to all the speakers. This is your opportunity. I think they covered some pretty cool, innovative solutions. Anyone have questions? Mr. Holt, to the microphone, sir.
I think I saw him at karaoke last night. He's a little foggy. Yeah.
He doesn't want to see another microphone for a while.
Sergeant Jones, that's sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, make sure I got that right. Question about the drones.
Okay.
So with your average 60-second response time, how fast can those drones fly? And then what is the, battery life? How long can they be deployed before they have to return to base?
All right, am I on? Okay, all right. Yeah, so good question. So two different answers, actually. So depends on how you're flying them. Autonomously, 45 miles per hour, and if you're manually flying, so if there's a pilot actually making all the movements, I believe it's 36 miles an hour. And then the second question is battery duration. You're looking at about 20 to 25 minutes real time, and that heavily depends on how far out you're flying. So it's kind of a loaded question, if that makes sense, because obviously the further out you have to go, the more time you have to account for coming back. So we're seeing about 20 to 25 minutes time on scene before we're coming back. I think this is a good opportunity to kind of segue into another part that I really didn't get into. Like I said, 20 minutes to discuss DFR is just really condensing it down. But there's avenues to mitigate that. And part of that is there's a waiver that we currently have and is available to public safety, and it's called, essentially it's a 4-to-1 waiver. So pilots are able to operate 4 drones up, for one pilot. So whenever you do have incidents, and we've seen this several times through our deployments, whenever you have incidents that go beyond, that 20-25 minute mark, you begin bringing another asset to the scene, and then you have that asset there, and it'll autonomously send the other one back whenever it's needed. So if you only have one pilot available, you can have someone basically rotating them in and out as needed. And if you have multiple pilots, obviously they can kind of hand them off. Say, hey, you take control of this one and I'll take control of that one. That answers your question?
Yeah, thanks.
Yes, sir.
City of Brookhaven, thanks for waking up early and do this nice presentation. A couple questions regarding the drones. So just curious how much they cost, and technically, did you assess the feasibility, or do you entertain the idea of using the drones for emergency lane closure, like being able to carry some cones and put it there in the right place to avoid secondary crashes, and also for emergency support that our champs or heroes are doing, like providing fueling capability to the drones or that kind?
Okay, I'll defer the first question to Scott on the cost. The second question, repeat it for me. Are we using them for lane closures?
Lane closures, like they are able to bring cones or things.
So good question, and I think you mean by actually the drone actually bringing a cone.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think that's been done, but I don't think it's outside of the scope of what drones are capable of, if that makes sense. So drones currently have the capability of transporting, I'll just say goods, if you will. So a lot of times in public safety, we use Narcan, AEDs. A lot of beach agencies will use them to transport flotation devices out to people out, that may be having trouble swimming. So I don't think that's outside the scope of what a drone's capable of, being able to move a cone or something like that. Now, I don't think the technology is there yet. I'm sure there are drones that are capable of doing that. So there are drones that people use to lift heavy equipment and stuff like that. I think in that aspect, it may be better off to have a person do it. Now, if you have a situation where you just don't have that personnel available, then sure, absolutely. Does that answer that question?
Yep.
And then the third was?
Well, it's pretty similar, like they're able to provide fuel to the disabled or stalled vehicle in the highway that are like.
Yeah, so I think the scope really of DFR is to provide that information to your first responders prior to them getting in. So them understanding like, hey, how many lanes need to be shut down? Where do they need to be shut down at? Where do we need to start rerouting traffic to alleviate congestion and you know, the secondary incidents and stuff like that that people talk about? That's the information that you're really getting in from DFR, and that's being sent to not only the first responders on the scene, but also the people that are kind of, I guess, more so what we're talking down here, making the decisions of like, hey, where do we need to start planning incidents at? So where are you seeing a lot of these secondary incidents occurring? Is it, you know, due to a curve? Is it, you know, around a choke point or whatnot? So I think that's kind of the where that's going at. Good, and then I'll defer off to the first.
Yeah.
question.
So the pricing, it can work in, you know, a single purchase. It can work in a longer term contract where there's, you know, payments. There's annual payments over a certain amount of time. Out of the box, you're looking at $130,000 for, you know, one drone 1 year. But if you know, kind of spread the peanut butter out over a longer period of time, then you're looking at around $60,000 a year over a 5-year period.
Gotcha. I think you're using a AI software or something like that for the maintenance or management part.
Yeah, so the cost includes like our field service team that comes out, performs, you know, repair and maintenance on the aircraft. So that price that I mentioned is like the full scope, and it includes all, like, you know, the battery replacements, propeller replacements as well.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
I have a two-part question. Number one, how is telemetry affected when we have adverse weather conditions? That's be my first question. And then the second question is, do we see any degradation with regards to performance of DFR response time when we have inclement weather?
Both really good questions. So a lot of response times in regards to weather is based off of FAA regulations. So the biggest thing on the FAA side is they don't want drones flying when you have heavy cloud coverage, or, you know, you think about times whenever you have like heavy dense fog and stuff like that. So they're referred to as weather minimums. So the most up-to-date waiver we have currently allows us to operate, I believe it's within 1 statute mile of cloud coverage, and then beyond that, you have regulatory framework that says you have to be, if I'm not mistaken off the top of my head, 500 feet under cloud coverage. So if you have cloud coverage and they're saying, hey, there's dense clouds at 700 feet, you're going to be limited to 200 feet, which typically in a DFR response, you're kind of in that window. Now, laterally, I think it's about 3,000. I don't know how a drone pilot is supposed to measure that, because I can't tell you how far a drone is necessarily from, but a lot of times what we'll do is we look at, they're called METARs, essentially it's FAA provided weather information, and whenever we see like, hey, and it's kind of like, I say common sense, if you look outside and it doesn't look like you should be flying a drone, you probably shouldn't. Not to say that it's not capable, but it's just because the way that we look at it and the way we run our program is from a safety standpoint. So us being so close to Peachtree DeKalb Airport, we have 2 children's hospitals that are adjacent to our city and one in our city that have life transports. So we don't want to put a drone up in the sky whenever those pilots can't see our drone. And that's kind of where the regulatory framework comes from. Now, I will say this, we've had instances, especially during the summer, where you have that pop-up thunder shower that comes out of absolutely nowhere, that we've been able to fly the drone in. I think they're regulated up to like 28 miles per hour, but to be honest with you, I think we've landed them and flown them in higher winds and higher gusts, and we've also flown them in, I would say, inclement weather where you have rain coming in. The biggest, I think the biggest thing with that, specifically with the extent that we've seen, is the drone itself has sensors on it that allows it to see what's around it. So it allows it to have obstacle avoidance. So it's avoiding trees, it's avoiding, and I've seen this in real time, so that's why I'm saying this. So you're able to avoid objects that it may run into. With that, you run into the issue of whenever you get a water droplet on one of those sensors, the drone sees that as well. So that's where you might run into a little bit of an issue. Now you can turn that obstacle avoidance off and manually fly it back. So again, it's a little bit of a loaded question. There are some regulatory frameworks that kind of prevent you from flying just from an FAA standpoint. That's probably going to be your biggest limitation if you decide to use drones at all.
Gotcha, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thanks, everybody. 9:45, I think that's it. We're right on time. Appreciate everybody getting in bright and early, and enjoy the rest of the day.